So chapter 48 deals with new sound palettes. We are dealing with the question, what is music? So hold on to your hats. This is going to be an interesting ride. So as a reminder, our main struggles for this time period is tradition versus innovation, which we saw with Rite of Spring, between high art and audience accessibility, and individual expressive goals versus community relevance. So I apologize in advance. I am kind of extremely nerdy when it comes to this topic. So just bear with me on this. Okay, so the first person to talk about is Henry Cowell. Now, Henry Cowell was interested in non-Western music, meaning music that didn't come from the United States. So he studied music from Japan, India, Iran, other places. And one of the main things that he came up with was he wanted to find a new way of playing the piano. He didn't want to do it the traditional way. He wanted to be innovative. So he came up with this idea of piano strings, where you play inside the piano. Have you ever heard of this before? So let me set the stage for you here. So here is the banshee, the piece that he writes for piano strings. Now, you see two people here. This person is doing absolutely nothing aside from holding the pedal down on the piano. This person here is the only one performing. He is playing inside the piano. So he's using his hands and he's plucking the strings, stroking the strings, all sorts of things to get these sound ideas that Henry Cowell is creating. As a side note, I'm going to be posting links to all of these pieces so that you can spend some time on your own listening to them, because I can't play them all for you on this recording. Okay, so think of a banshee. What is a banshee supposed to be like? It's supposed to be this maybe perhaps old woman, or kind of figure that's like flying through the air screaming. So how do you get a piano to sound like that? Well, Henry Cowell says play inside the piano and you'll get that idea. So here's a taste of the banshee. So I know that's just a very small taste. Make sure you listen to the whole thing. But it's kind of crazy how it can sound like screaming whenever he's rubbing and plucking the strings inside the piano. Never been done before. Very innovative. That was Henry Cowell. He had a bunch of pieces, but Banshee is the main one that everyone knows. So then, Henry Cowell was also a teacher. He had a bunch of students that came and studied with him. One in particular, his name is John Cage. John Cage, one of my favorites, said this: "I thought I could never compose socially important music. Only if I could invent something new, then I would be useful to society." Huge! He thought he couldn't write anything that could change the world. Only if he did something new, then he could be useful to society. So, what does he do to make something new? Well, he does three things in particular that all blow your mind. Here we go. So, the first thing that he did was, well, blah, blah, blah. Here's some background info on him. Born in Los Angeles, studying with Henry Cowell. He does a lot of weird things. So, the first thing he questions is, what is music? What is music? So, he writes this piece called Water Walk, and he challenges what the current definition of music is. If you think back to your journal, the 24 hours that you had to list the music and sounds that you heard over 24 hours, and then you said what you thought was considered music and what you thought was considered noise, and I asked you maybe in response to that whether you thought noise could ever be music, or just based on whatever you said. John Cage is arguing what you think music is. So here is his piece, Water Walk. He's performing it on a late night talk show, and he actually sells it for money. So here's Water Walk.
John Cage and Water Walk.
And this piece goes on for another 2 minutes. So he's on stage, he's watering flowers, he's playing with a rubber chicken, he's mixing a drink, pouring a scotch, all of these things. Is this music? Good question. Do you think it's music? Well, one thing I want to pose for you is that he is not doing this just on a whim. He's carrying around this stopwatch in his hand. So these noises are scheduled and specific. He has planned out when each of them will happen. So it's not just random. Okay? So is noise music? Can the, alarm on your phone be considered music? It has a particular rhythm, and it has a pitch, if those are things you think should be part of what music is. How about the sprinkler that's outside, or the wind, or anything that makes noise? Is noise music? John Cage is arguing that it is, and that's how he does that in Water Walk. So, moving on from there, he thinks back to his teacher, Henry Cowell, who did those piano strings pieces, and he's thinking, how can I take that one step further? How can I be innovative with that? Keeping in mind that he can't compose socially important music. Only if he does something new, then he can be useful to society. So he comes up with this idea of prepared piano. So the story goes that he's living in Seattle and he's employed by this dance troupe. And this dance troupe is performing this piece and they need music. And he wants to write music for percussion ensemble, but the only space available on the stage is for a piano. So he's trying to figure out how he can change this piano to sound like a percussion ensemble. So what would you do? Give up? Or, come up with something else to do? Well, John Cage instead puts screws, nails, bolts, all sorts of things into the piano to make it sound like a percussion ensemble. And he actually writes a collection of music called Sonatas and Interludes, and this is a portion from Sonata 5. This is the idea of prepared piano. Sonata 5. So you can see here all of the different things that are placed inside the piano that when the notes are struck, it makes that sound. It sounds almost like a percussion ensemble. Crazy how that works, right? So he writes a collection of things for this, and that is to be innovative, to say something new and different. Now, I want you to keep in mind that people don't play this type of music often because it takes like 3 hours to prepare for a song like this, because John Cage is very specific about where each screw needs to go inside the piano. So it's not performed often for that reason, and also the fact that it can damage the piano. And do you want to be putting nails into a $200,000 piano? Probably not. So it's not performed all that often, but still hugely innovative. All right, so then we have, we talked about Water Walk, and then we talked about Sonata 5, which is paired piano. And then the next thing that he does is, does silence contribute anything to music? Can silence be considered music? So he writes this piece called 4 minutes and 33 seconds. So let me set the stage for you. Okay, so you're sitting in the audience. This pianist walks out on stage. Everyone's clapping. He bows. He goes over to the piano, sits down, puts his music up on the piano bench, and starts the timer. Sits there. At a specific time, he turns the page. At a specific time, he turns the page again. When his stopwatch has reached 4 minutes and 33 seconds, he closes the score, stands up, bows, and leaves the stage. So, is this piece 4 minutes and 33 seconds of silence? Well, there's nothing written on the music itself. But John Cage is arguing that silence does contribute to music, number one. And we can talk about that later. But the other thing that he's arguing is that every noise that the audience members make during that 4 minutes and 33 seconds is part of the music. Whether it's a baby crying, someone turning to their neighbor going, "What is this? I paid for this?" He's not playing anything. Or this old woman that's coughing and can't, unwrap her little lozenge that we know always happens. All of that is the music. And that there isn't actually complete silence anywhere. What do you think about that? So, also keep in mind, it's only 4 minutes and 33 seconds. I always hear my students say, why would you pay to go see something like this? Well, that's a good point, except for that it's 4 minutes. And if you're going to a concert, it's going to be an hour and a half long, and this is just one piece in the span of, a bunch of other ones. In his commentary on what music is, challenging our beliefs, doing something innovative. Because remember, he can't compose socially relevant music. Only if he was doing something innovative, then he would be useful to society. So Cage becomes obsessed with this idea of silence. Is there a place where he can find silence? So he goes on this pilgrimage, and he ends up in the West. And he goes to this soundproof chamber, where he's told that when he walks in, he can hear complete silence. So he knows what it sounds like. So he walks in, and what does he hear? His heartbeat. Because our bodies are making music 24/7. Even in a soundproof chamber, our body's still making music. No such thing as complete silence. So is noise music? What do you think? I look forward to hearing your thoughts.